All right, everyone, welcome back. I wanted to cover a pretty significant topic, something I'm pretty passionate about, and something that I've realized that a lot of people simply don't understand. And I have longer lectures on this about Zionism, what it is, and a lot more detail, but I want to do something short so people who may not have time to sit through a long video can understand what is Zionism and why it matters. And to understand Zionism, you really have to go back 3,000 years. It is an idea. Zionism is a term that comes around in the 1800s AD. It simply comes from the Jewish word Zion, which means place of refuge. And it was an idea in the 1800s AD that the Jewish people need a homeland, a safe haven. Why do I say it goes back 3,000 years to understand? Well, if you look at this map on this first slide we have, you see the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. Eventually, these two kingdoms, which go back to about 3,000 years ago, were united into one kingdom, the kingdom of the ancient Jewish people, the indigenous people of that land, with their capital, of course, in the city of Jerusalem. Right over here, you could see there. And they thrived on that land. They built, of course, a famous temple on that land, and they lived there as the indigenous people of that territory. What happens historically is it doesn't take long for other civilizations to attempt to conquer that land from the Jewish people. Which civilizations? Well, let's just go through a few here. And you'll see these are what we call the conquerors, right? The ancient Assyrians came in, the Babylonians. The Babylonians not only conquered the land, they actually destroyed Solomon's temple. Then you have, or at least the first temple, there'll be a second temple rebuilt on the same spot. You'll have the ancient Persians, and then the Romans. The Romans came in, they devastated this region. They persecuted the Jewish people. They didn't just conquer the land, they massacred hundreds of thousands of Jewish people, mainly because of their monotheistic religion. And so, you had the Roman period, then you had other groups like the Umayyads and the Abbasids and the Ottomans. And during some of this time, there were actually places of religious significance to the Jewish people that were built literally right on top of during the period of, for example, the Umayyads. They built their religious sites right on top of the Jewish religious sites. You had the British, and, there were others as well. All the way back to, from 900 BC until the 1800s, 1900s AD, I should say. And so there was this long series of conquerors. And during that time, there was always a Jewish presence in the land, but also there were many Jews who were forced out of their land. And as the Jewish people were forced out, what did they face when they didn't have that safe haven? Well, we know historically what they faced. They faced an amazing amount of persecution and murders and false accusations of all sorts of things, and they were tormented everywhere they went. So in the 1800s, there was this Zionistic idea, Theodor Herzl, and again, I have longer videos on this, and they said, no, the Jewish people need a safe haven. And so there was that idea, but that idea was not recognized by the international community. It was delayed, it was stalled, all the way, of course, into the 1900s. And then the Holocaust happened, and 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust, which takes us to why Zionism matters, and also a very important myth that I want to make sure everybody understands. And so we have this myth that the Holocaust created Israel, because what happens is after the Holocaust, the international community says, ooh, the Zionists were right. They really do need a place of refuge, a safe haven. And so the international community created, or recognized, I shouldn't say created, but recognized the Jewish state of Israel. And so as a result of that, people falsely believe that the state of Israel was created because of the Holocaust, when the reality is the Holocaust happened because there was no state of Israel. There was no safe haven. There was no place for the Jewish people to have as a place to be safe when all these horrible things were happening. I also have this map up to give you some really important perspective. So when the international community finally says, yes, we recognize the Jewish state of Israel, you're looking at this map here, and it's this little sliver of land that you see here in red. That's it. That's the entire territory that we're talking about here. It is about the size of New Jersey, folks. And if you compare it to everything in green, those are the areas that would be the Muslim-dominated nations. And not everyone there is Muslim, but Muslim-dominated nations. And you have this one tiny little Jewish state there. Further, if you think of it in another perspective, there are about 2 billion Christians in the world. There are almost 2 billion Muslims in the world. There's probably 15 to 20 million Jewish people in the world. So they don't have much. There are scores of Christian-dominated nations, scores of Muslim-dominated nations. There is one Jewish state. And so this gets us to a term that is also important, which is anti-Zionism. Because then, as soon as Zionism is, of course, created and the state of Israel is acknowledged, there's quickly the anti-Zionists, which sadly are still around today. And the anti-Zionists are people who simply do not want a creation of a Jewish state, which is, and as I explained in another video of mine, simply another form of anti-Semitism. Because the anti-Zionists are not just people who are critical of the state of Israel. It's fine to be critical of the state of Israel. It's fine to be critical of any nation. The anti-Zionists don't want the Jewish state to even exist. Try to imagine somebody saying, well, I have no problem with French people, but I don't want France to exist. I have no problem with people from Mexico, but I don't want the country of Mexico to exist. And then you add on top of that the long history of persecution of the Jewish people and the vital need for the safe haven. You can quickly put all this together and understand how anti-Zionism is not much more than another form of anti-Semitism. And again, I have a much longer video explaining this in more detail, which I hope you check out. But what I do want to make sure you understand, at least from this short video, is Zionism is simply the idea of the Jewish people having that safe haven, and historically why it matters, especially to that core idea of the Holocaust, because I can guarantee you the Holocaust would not have happened if the Jewish people had that safe haven before World War II. All right, I hope all that's clear. Please share this video and, leave comments. I'd love to know, if this was interesting, if you learned a lot from it. And check out some of the other videos that are longer that give you more detail on this. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thank you.